In the heart of Boston, young men disappear after a night out, only to be found days later in the murky waters of the Charles River. Police call them accidents, but there's something hauntingly deliberate about it all. The question everyone's asking, is there a serial killer lurking in plain sight? It was a crisp, cool night in Boston, and the bars along the waterfront were bustling with the sounds of laughter and clinking glasses. The city had an energy that couldn't be replicated anywhere else, a raw, magnetic pull that drew people from all over. For the men who came to Boston to drink, dance, and forget their worries, it was just another weekend night out. But that night, something was different. Sam Reynolds, a 28-year-old graphic designer from the suburbs, was at his usual hangout spot near the Charles River. It had been a long week, and after a couple of beers, he was in high spirits. He and his friends joked about old college days, and the night felt like any other. But by midnight, something felt off. Sam was the last to leave the bar. His friends had already gone home, and the streets were quieter than usual. As he walked toward his apartment, something, a nagging feeling, clung to him. He couldn't shake the sensation that he was being watched, but when he turned around, the street behind him was empty. He shook off the feeling and continued walking, his footsteps echoing against the pavement. But by the time he reached the edge of the river, Sam's phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out, expecting a text or a call. Instead, it was a strange notification from an app he'd never used before, one with an unsettling name, The Watcher. It was a simple message, "You're next." Sam scoffed, thinking it was some kind of prank. But as he turned to head back, he felt something in the air shift. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up. Before he could make sense of it, everything went black. The next morning, Sam's friends woke up to an alarming silence. No texts, no social media posts. Just nothing. His phone had gone off the grid. By noon, the search began. Days passed. Sam's body was found floating in the Charles River, his face pale and lifeless, his eyes wide open, staring at nothing. It was written off as an accident, a late-night drunken mistake. But something about it didn't sit right with the people who knew Sam best. He was careful. He'd never walked along the river alone. He'd never ignored a message, especially one from a strange app. The pattern of his disappearance matched others before him, and the rumors began to spread. Sam Reynolds wasn't the first to vanish. Over the past few months, a string of young men had gone missing after nights out in Boston. The missing men were all around Sam's age, with similar builds and backgrounds. They'd been last seen leaving bars or walking alone at night. Days later, their bodies turned up, lifeless, in the Charles River. The police dismissed it as a string of unfortunate accidents. The river had a history of claiming lives, especially after long nights of drinking. But the public wasn't so quick to accept that explanation. A local journalist named Clara Green started digging into the stories. Clara had always been fascinated by unsolved mysteries, and this case caught her attention. The disappearances were too calculated, too precise. She reached out to the families of the missing men. What she discovered sent a chill down her spine. Each of the victims had received the same strange notification from an app before they disappeared. Some had mentioned feeling like they were being watched, others said they had a sinking feeling that something terrible was about to happen. One of the victims, a man named Jason Miles, had even posted about it online. "I don't know what's going on, but I feel like I'm being followed. Something doesn't feel right. If anything happens to me, it's the last person I saw. Watch him." Jason's post had been vague, but his words carried weight. The last person I saw, who was that? Who had Jason meant? Was there someone stalking these men, picking them off one by one? The similarities between the cases kept piling up. Same city, same river, same chilling notifications, and each time, the police attributed it to the same cause, an accident. But Clara wasn't convinced. She'd seen enough in her career to know when something didn't add up. She started looking deeper into the app, The Watcher. It was a dead end. No developer, no contact information. Nothing but the app itself, and the ominous messages it sent to the victims. As Clara dug further, she found an unsettling connection. Each of the victims had unknowingly crossed paths with one person, a man who had been seen at each of the bars the victims frequented. His name, Alan Hayes, a man who, despite his unassuming demeanor, had been in the background of every incident. Clara wasn't the only one growing suspicious. Detective Mark Davis, a veteran with the Boston Police Department, had been quietly following the disappearances. He'd always believed the official story, that the river had claimed these young men. But after hearing Clara's findings, he started to see the flaws in the case. The timing, the app, the eerie similarities. Clara and Detective Davis met in secret to discuss what they had uncovered. Davis admitted he'd noticed something odd about the timing of the disappearances, too. They were always after a busy night at the bars, always late at night, and always along the same stretch of the river. He showed her an old map of Boston, one dotted with bars, clubs, and narrow alleys. Every victim had been close to those same spots. Then, there was Alan Hayes. Mark had run his background check and found a few disturbing details. Alan was a man of mystery, an enigma. No one could remember a time when he wasn't around, always lurking in the background. But what was more troubling was his connection to a criminal network operating out of Boston's underground scene. He had ties to various shady dealings, including smuggling and human trafficking. Clara and Mark pieced it together. The app wasn't some random joke or coincidence, it was a tool used to mark the victims. Alan had been tracking them, choosing them carefully. He had been hunting them all along. But what was his motive? Why did he choose these men? That's when Clara found a chilling connection to Alan's past, a grudge that went back years. He had been one of the men who survived a notorious hazing ritual during his college years, a ritual that had involved drowning a victim in the river. He had come close to death but had escaped the consequences, and now he was exacting his revenge. He wanted to turn the tables on those who had once hurt him, using the men as pawns in his twisted game. But it wasn't just revenge. It was about power. He wanted to control the river, to become the master of the water that had once nearly claimed him. As Clara and Detective Davis prepared to confront Alan Hayes, they realized they were running out of time. The next disappearance was imminent. They traced his movements, following the clues that led them to a secluded area near the river, where Alan's dark intentions had begun to take shape. They found his hideout, a small, abandoned warehouse filled with dark photographs of the victims, notes, and a map with red X's marking each spot where he had chosen his prey. But Alan was waiting for them. A tense confrontation ensued, with Alan revealing his twisted motives. He saw himself as a victim, someone who had been wronged by the world and was now seeking justice in his own way. The river had become his sanctuary, his place of power, and he wasn't going to let anyone stand in his way. In a final showdown, Alan was apprehended, and his twisted plan was revealed to the public. The app, it had been his tool to keep his victims in check, a way of tracking them and ensuring they stayed within his reach. The case was closed, but the shadows of Alan Hayes and the haunting river would remain in Boston's history forever. The city had been marked by the disappearances of the vanishing men, and it would never forget the hidden killer who lurked beneath the surface.